few names short, mostly my other chair. We'll give it a couple more minutes. If people want to do a mic check or test things out, just jump in. I really want to start, but I think we're short two very key people. Let's see if I can get in touch with them.
I know that Marco can't make it because his daughter's unwell.
Oh, okay. I was more wondering where my co-chair was. Admittedly, it's quite early in the morning for him. I've sort of sent him a couple of messages. I haven't heard anything back yet. We may have to just start without him and hope that he joins us before we make any sort of real progression, just so that we can stick to time. I think what I'll do is I'll give it 2 more minutes and we'll start at 5 minutes past the hour. It's probably the safest bet to do. And in the meantime, I'll see if I can get in touch with him. Okay, I've tried to call Tim and I couldn't get through, so let's just get started because this shouldn't be an overly complicated affair. Good day, people. This is the JSON Path Working Group for IETF 110. Just before we get started, the usual, you've probably seen this before, but I have to do the reminder. This is the note well. It applies to this meeting as it does to all other IETF meetings. Please note well if you have any questions. Myself and Francesca, our new AD, can answer any questions and forward you on to people as appropriate. Can I, before we get into, I guess, the meat of the discussion, do we have somebody that can be a note taker, please? I understand this instigates a certain amount of bystander syndrome, but if somebody could take notes, please, that would be very appreciative.
I can take it.
Thank you, Jeffrey. If you send it out afterwards, I'm sure we can help out with anything that you miss. Thank you. As for a JavaScribe, given that we're quite a small group, I'm more than happy to do that. Is there any agenda bashing? Is there anything that anybody has a particular subject they'd like to bring up before we get started? Nope. Okay. The agenda's fairly minimal today. Usually I would expect him to be driving this. He's unfortunately not here. But I guess maybe as a good starting point, if our editors and those who've been working hard on the draft could perhaps provide some sort of informal update about where things are. Glenn, you recently had submitted the renaming of the draft. Is there any other updates? You can just unmute yourself, Glenn, that's fine.
Okay, not used to the protocol. I can just summarize where we're at. I mean, a while back, we formed a working group and got a merged draft together of the draft that I'd been editing and the one that Stefan Gerstner and Carsten had been working on. And so we got that merged draft, and there's been a little bit of editorial work on it, and that's now the current base 00 version in the documents area on data tracker. But more recently, there's been a flurry of activity on the mailing list and in issues discussing various aspects, gradually coming to conclusions in various places, but a lot of discussion going off in various tangents. So I'm not sure whether we're converging or diverging at the moment, but there's certainly a lot of discussion going on, but no sign of any pull requests. So there's no writing going on as far as I can tell. And just personally, my intention is to work on the reference implementation or a reference implementation and leave the writing to Stefan and Marco. That was the current plan. I think that's everything from my perspective.
Okay. It probably doesn't help us that neither Stefan nor Marco are here. That makes this meeting a little bit difficult to sort of make any sort of progress. I understand there's currently a handful of issues that are that remain open. Some of which are more contentious than others. Is there any particular issues that perhaps require a bit more discussion in this forum that worth going through? Carsten.
Yeah, I'm not an author. I'm not coordinating this process in any way, but I do intend to provide further pull requests. It's just that this IETF had a lot of other challenges for me. So don't count on the current silence and continuing, because I think there is still a lot to be done editorially with the document. But also I think we really need to get a few issues out of the way that really need to be decided before we can make substantial further progress. And for me right now, the most important issue is what is exactly going to be the processing model that we assume. And we have had some discussions on the list, but I think we haven't really managed to structure these discussions yet in a way that leads to progress. And I think that's really the next big item, but I'm also aware that there are lots of little issues that do merit working on them on their own.
Okay, that's a very good update. Thank you for that, Carsten. In terms of the processing model as you described it, is that to me sort of sounds like an effort for perhaps. Is that something that we could discuss in this time slot now and make some sort of meaningful discussion about, or is that something you think we should take to the mailing list?
Well, I think it's always better if it's carefully prepared, if a discussion is carefully prepared, but given that we don't have that, maybe we could do a little bit of impromptu discussion and see where we are with respect to that.
Sure. I'm going to take your lead on that, because I think that you're far more informed on that than I am.
Thank you for throwing back the ball. Yeah. So do you want to do this now, or are there other things you want to do first?
I don't, to be honest with you, now that we've started talking about it, given that we don't exactly have a rich agenda of discussion points to go through, it's probably the best use of our time.
Okay, so there are 23 issues on the GitHub repository that are marked as open.
Yep.
And I think we haven't really managed to label them appropriately, and we haven't really managed to boil them down to issues that are narrow enough that you actually can resolve those. But there are issues like sequence of results, duplicates in selector output, and maybe the whole discussion about the term union that really point to some uncertainty about what the processing model is. Now, given that JSONPath has, thank you. Given that JSONPath has learned from Xpath in its youth, I think it's interesting to look at the Xpath processing model, which is really about node sets as the most important data structure that is being used, at least in an abstract fashion, and then you have steps that go through these node sets. So the whole thing has a really long story. Much of this was developed in the late 80s, early 90s in the context of the DISL project, document style semantics and specification language in ISO IEC. But basically the idea is that you have ways to step from the nodes that you are currently sitting on, and that you have ways to select subsets and compute values. And at the time we had an expression language that was based on Lisp that was doing all these things that got turned into a special thing for Xpath and XSLT, but I think basically the idea is the same. But the important part to make this whole thing work is that you need to know where you are what actually how the sequence of steps actually are connected together. So what are the intermediate results? And for Xpath, that's a pretty obvious structure. That's the node set. So you essentially identify a subset of the set of positions that are defined in the document. So the node set has a few interesting properties, and one of them is that it actually does not record duplicates. So you only can mark a node once in a node set. So that automatically gives you one property, which is interesting. And also the set is not by itself ordered. So there is no order information left by the various operations. I hope somebody is taking good notes.
Jeffrey is. He's also asked a question asking if we've got a specific issue in the issues. I presume, Jeffrey, you're referring to the processing model. Is that correct?
For context, if we could mention issue numbers, then I'll dump them in the notes.
Okay.
Yeah. So just judging from the title, I think 27 is one of them. 23 is one of them. 21 is one of them. I think even 15 is 14 and 15 are one. So these are just different ways of approaching the elephant and finding trunks and legs and so on of the overall question, what's the processing model?
Okay. With those issues you've identified, we can just quickly create a label and attach it to the ones that you think fall under that, and then so that we can collect them together if that's useful.
Sounds good.
Okay, so it's 14.
But of course, it would be nice if the people who raise these issues would actually agree that they pertain to this general problem of processing model.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the first one that really brought up the problem to the surface.
Yep. Well, bear with me a second. It helps if I'm signed in. Okay. So let's create a new label, shall we? Just call it processing. Backseat drivers are welcome here. So saying 14. Hang on 1 second. Where is it? Yeah. So we're on the same page. So it was 57, did you? No, it wasn't 57. Sorry, Carlson, can you remind me which issues you highlighted specifically? It was 14, 15.
No, I cannot say that, but I can try to find them again. So I think 15 at least touches on this. 21, 23, and 27 touch on these.
Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey. Okay. And the label doesn't set anything in concrete. It just allows us, it'll just allow us to be able to identify these later on and have this discussion. So.
Yeah, I must admit that I added some labels hoping that I would spawn a process where other people add labels, but that hasn't happened yet. Yep. Maybe because people are unsure about what they are allowed to do here and whatnot. And I'm kind of on the Wikipedia be bold side. You will be called back if you do something that's not appropriate.
So. Given the amount of participation that we have is fairly minimal, and thank you for the link in the chat, Christina. Given the amount of, we've got fairly a small community here in this working group, I would say just go ahead and do stuff, obviously in a considerate manner. So if people need access or I need to twiddle things to help you get this work done, I will do it. That's my role. So okay, so I think that's most of the issues. 27, 23, 23 duplicates and selector outputs. We think this one's also part of the list.
Well, definitely, because how this thing that replaces the node set, which I have called collection just as a placeholder word, how that is structured actually tells you what the fate will be of duplicates.
Yep. No, this looks like it. We've just got some ongoing discussion in there. So 15, 21, 23, 27. I think I've covered all of them except 14. Okay. 14 would be the other one to include. Okay. So it sounds like one of the actions we've now got is to, I guess, try to triage these a little bit further. Okay. I'm trying to think about how we should keep going with this.
Well, let me just throw out a strawman that I'm sure nobody else but me likes, and then we can try to find out why people don't like that. So my strawman is, why don't we just import the node set idea from Xpath wholesale and structure everything around node sets?
Okay. Is there anybody else from the working group who would like to chime in? I see Julie.
Oh, we have consensus.
Okay, I think we've got consensus on that. That was very quick.
Okay, let me.
Glenn.
Yeah, I'll bite. So it depends on the type of reference that the node set makes into the JSON document that's input. How did you see that going? Would that be a would it point to a node? Would it be a reference to a node in some sense in the original document, or a copy, or what, or a value?
No, it's a reference.
No, it's a reference.
Reference, okay. Yeah, I mean, certainly in the in my input draft, the processing model I had in mind was that we built up an ordered list of elements as we went through the JSON path selector, the components of the selector, and didn't remove duplicates. And I just had in mind efficiency, really, and sensitivity to the current implementations. I don't think there are many, if any, implementations that remove duplicates. So that was my goal. But certainly having a maybe not a node set, but a node list, an ordered collection of nodes would satisfy that. It wouldn't have to be values because they're immutable. So a reference into the original structure would be helpful. And also it would tie down the fact that the intermediate values passing through were all subnodes, or subtrees of the original document.
Yeah, so the definition of the term node would be a subtree of the original document, and not the value of that, but the actual subtree.
Yeah, so my preference would be to allow duplicates in that list.
Yeah, so if you turn from a set to a list, you get two things. You get the ability to get duplicates, and you get order.
Yeah. And admittedly, there's a trade-off there, because from the user's perspective, they may prefer not to have duplicates, but it depends how quickly they want the result to be returned.
Okay, that doesn't sound particularly contentious. Okay, is there any other? I'm trying to think if there's any sort of value of us going through the rest of the issues that are here. To make most of the time that we've got to discuss all of this.
The next step would be to actually go through these issues with the assumption we are using a node list and see whether the examples that have been brought up in these issues actually bring up problems with that or advantages of doing that. That may be a bit tedious to do in the meeting, so I'm wondering how to do this. So if I was doing this in a classroom, I would just divide the students into small groups. Each one of them gets an issue and looks at it for 5 minutes and then reports on what they found.
Yep. That would be the only challenge that we have is that our editors aren't about. So, which I kind of ran on the assumption that they would be in the best position to do this, but this is certainly something that I can do, and I guess if we can get some help from other members of the working group who are prepared to look at a couple of issues. I wouldn't want to lump all of the work with you, Carsten.
Yeah, I'm afraid MeetEcho doesn't have breakout rooms, which I would use for that. So it's hard to duplicate. We have done this in the thing-to-thing research group occasionally, that we just all went into one of the four corners of the room and tried to get some work to get done, and then came back together and reported on what the four corners found. But you cannot do this in MeetEcho.
Yeah, I mean, there's 23 issues here, and I don't think all of them apply to what we've agreed about with regards to the node set. There's really just the processing model tickets that we've listed here. Although I think there may be others that I'm just sort of looking at the names, judging books by their covers, seeing if there's any others that might fit into that. Yes, Jeffrey, if folks would like to help out with regards to sort of triaging these tickets as Carsten described, that would be that's sort of the ask here. Okay. If there's anybody who'd like to help out with that, please speak up now.
Are we talking about doing it? Are we talking about doing it in real time? Taking a break?
No, I think that'd be. I think that would be a bit too finicky and about as amusing as paint drying. I think this is one of those things where we go away offline and have a look at this because it may stir ongoing discussion that may need to come back to the list or so on and so forth. But it sounds like that we've got a bit of an action there, and this is something that I'll talk to Tim. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
If we don't have other things to talk about in particular, then it might actually be a good use of time to like assign an issue to each person who volunteers.
Okay.
Stop talking for 5 minutes and then come back and report back on the issues.
Okay. Is that all? Does that also mean you're volunteering? Sorry, Carsten, I talked over you there.
Well, I think I talked over you. I'll take issue 14.
Okay. I will give you issue 14. Define an algorithm. Oh no, not me. Idiots! So you can tell I use GitHub a lot. Okay. It's now assigned to you. Jeffrey, do you have if you don't have a choice, I will give you 15. I don't think you're on here. I can't assign this to you, I don't think, Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. But I will leave 15 with you, if you don't mind.
Can I just interrupt? I mean, I think assigning one of these issues to someone at this point is probably not the best ploy, because we're just talking about doing some analysis, coming back and discussing it. Whereas we don't, I personally don't want to be, quotes, lumbered with one of these issues after the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, let's clear those assignments after the meeting. We can do this for now. I don't think we have any assignments that need to be preserved.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to do 20. I can do 27.
Okay.
So since I cannot make slides, I'm just going to type into the notes.
Sure. of time, it might be an idea that we sort of make moves in about, say, 5-10 more minutes, unless people feel they need a bit more time.
I've finished. It's Glenn.
Okay.
Report to.
Okay. Shall we continue?
Please.
Well, I guess, does anybody want to talk first? I guess is more the question. Jeffrey.
Sure. Could someone else take notes for any discussion that arises for this section?
Sure. If nobody else will step up to it, I'll put myself on mute and take what I can.
Sure. So I looked at 15, which is selector definitions, basically an attempt to start a processing model. And Karsten has chimed in there with the collections idea. And the impact of defining this as a list seems to be that nobody is doing that by default. All of the discussion is talking about which set of objects particular things are returning and not what order they are. And in JavaScript, objects only kind of have an order. I looked up the JSON RFC and it says sometimes they make the ordering of object members visible. So we're going to have, if we keep an order here, we're going to have to say that we're going to have to say what order things show up in, which could be ambiguous for objects. Otherwise, everything seemed consistent, and actually to be assuming definitely like that duplicates. Well, it doesn't mention whether duplicates happen, but it doesn't describe deduplicating either.
Yeah, so the whatever 8259 says, the practical matter is that JSON path evaluator will sometimes have to work on JSON data and not on a JSON text. And the JSON data may not be presented in a way that provides any ordering to the map entries. So, for instance, JavaScript tends to put numeric map keys first and then the other map keys and so on. So there is some reordering going on in implementations in Python that reordering is actually different between each invocation, which can be a lot of fun when you're trying to debug things. Yeah, JSON objects do not have order, and any selector that actually relies on order in a map is ill-defined. Of course, arrays do have order, and I think that generally, if you filter an array, the result of that filter should have the same order that the original array had.
One.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment about the ordering of objects. I think, if I remember correctly, the only selector component, selector that actually would impact is something like an asterisk, square brackets asterisk, to pick out all the values of an object. And in that case, yes, the output would be, the order would be non-deterministic. But I think, aside from that, I think ordering would work. I think we just have to accept that if you use that construct, then the nodes that would be delivered from that would be in a non-deterministic order in the node list. But suppose someone had introduced square bracket star twice over somehow, not sure exactly how that would work, then I think the remove the duplicates thereafter would still work. We'd end up with the original non-deterministic order, potentially. So I think it could be made to work together. I don't think we need to throw out ordering just because of the behavior of objects.
It's just something to mention clearly.
Yeah, you also could redefine an order. So if I think that's a question that really should be an issue on its own. Do we expect JSON path to be deterministic? So if you apply the same query to the same JSON data item, do you get the same result? And if that is really important to us, then we may have to prescribe an order in which this star operator returns its values.
Is there a better summary of what you've just said? And I'll make this into a new issue right now, Carsten.
Maybe I just should make that issue.
Okay, that's fine.
Play Chinese whispers here.
Works fine for me. Okay.
Let me just express an opinion while we're here. I don't think it should be deterministic in this case, because I think that would be too constraining on the implementations. And I don't think it actually matters, because I think applying star to an object is probably a pretty rare use case. I don't think it really matters. And if you exclude that case, then it becomes deterministic everywhere else. I think recursive descent is a possible area of where we need to tighten up the order, but I think you can have a well-defined order there. But I think everywhere else, sequences and so on are well-defined.
Perhaps this just needs language that says that if you're using a wildcard, determinism is all bets off.
Wildcard for an object, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Carsten?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of typing that issue, but anyway, so the processing model discussion or algorithm discussion under number 14 was actually pretty far along when it kind of derailed into it's funny to see people fixing the markdown there. So when it derailed into a discussion about what we can do about recursive or nested filters and so on. I think that that's a completely different issue, so it doesn't really have a bearing on this. So I think what mainly resulted from the discussion is this little snippet, which I have slightly changed. So the algorithm is we start with a node list that has the root item. This node list or collection or whatever you want to call it is then repeatedly updated. So we go through the JSON path expression and linearly apply each selector. And the selector is applied by starting with an empty result collection. And then for each item that is in the current node list, we apply the selector to that one item. The result is of applying the selector is a node list that is appended to the result list, and I think that's where the first little question marks are coming up. What exactly appending means here, and then the proposal, exactly, that's the one I'm reciting here. The proposal says the results are put through an operator that is called distinct, that I have no idea what it does, but probably something about duplicates, and that then becomes the current node list again. And when the path selector is the path expression is completed, we just return the current node list. That makes a lot of sense to me, except again that I don't know what append and distinct are meaning exactly. So there are several options not taken here. So for instance, the selector does not get the whole node list. The selector gets each entry of the node list, each element of the node list in turn. So you cannot write selectors that order node lists or do something interesting like build an average. You only ever get selectors that work on a single node. And yeah, I said it's not clear what distinct means, and I think we just already discussed about selectors that take objects, take items out of an unordered map or JSON object. I think we covered that already. So I would love to hear what people think about this append and distinct operations.
For me, the obvious meaning for append is really concatenate. I would think the selector brackets item would return a node list, and append would concatenate the two. But I admit it's ambiguous, isn't it? It could be, something else. And distinct, I would hope, runs through the node list in linear order, and when it encounters a duplicate, removes the later occurrence of the duplicate and then keeps going. So essentially, if you get the same node multiple times over, only the first occurrence survives.
What is a duplicate?
Say again?
What is a duplicate?
Okay. Yeah, pointed to this reference to the same node.
Okay. So to a node that already was in the node list.
Yes. I'm guessing here. I have no idea, but that would be my preference.
Well, that's at least a straw man that we can discuss.
Okay. I take it these are we going to be adding some comments onto these issues? That was it. That was a question, is are we going to put some comments onto these issues, clarifying what we've just discussed?
I would suggest you as chair go through after the meeting and summarize the discussion with a link to the discussion on each issue that we've talked about.
Okay.
So I would expect that someone makes a pull request out of this. So unless there is more discussion that calls into question whether these decisions are right, we can make a pull request out of that. And the pull request should be specific and detailed and unambiguous enough that we really can discuss it, in particular against the various implementation survey pieces we have that we can run against this.
Okay, I mean, maybe it's appropriate at this point to then discuss the way the working group operates, because currently it's very much in mailing list and issue mode, and I don't see the editors rushing to produce pull requests at the moment. By editors, I'm referring to Stefan and Marco, who were the editors that we were kind of expecting to do most of the writing. And I too favour pull requests, but it's, you know, I could plough into this, but I'm trying to hold off and focus on the reference implementation and the compliance test suite. So, Carsten, were you thinking you might have time to do a pull request for this?
But within the month of March, yes. Not this week, maybe not next week, but certainly before Easter.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carsten. Okay, that sounds like we've made some good progress there. That pull request can, okay. Sounds like we can put a summary onto some of these issues, then I'll do that afterwards, after I speak to Tim and make sure that he's abreast as to what we're doing. It sounds like we've made a fair whack of progress today with regards to this. We've talked through Jeffrey's, we've talked through Carsten's. Glenn, have we talked through yours?
No, but we can do that briefly if you like.
Yeah.
So number 27 actually was it's just a single comment issue, and it referred mainly back to number 23, duplicates in selector output. And there was a bit of discussion back and forth. Wasn't really a consensus there, but the last proposal seemed to be, it wasn't immediately countered, so it was tending towards removing duplicate nodes but not duplicate values, which is consistent, I think, with the node list idea we've been discussing today. It does make me wonder about certain languages. I just have the back of my mind, you know, things like, I don't know, Haskell or some other languages that pass by value. Might be difficult to distinguish a node from a value, a reference from a value, a duplicate node rather from a duplicate value. But I don't have any concrete evidence there to say that's a problem.
I wouldn't be worried so much about the languages unless there is already implementations in those languages.
Yeah, there isn't, as far as I know, so that's fine. Yeah, there was interesting discussion in number 23 about whether removal of duplicates would affect ordering and consequently make the spec non-deterministic, but I don't think it would. I think if we defined it carefully and said that later nodes were discarded in preference to earlier nodes, sorry, in favor of earlier nodes, then you'd get deterministic ordering. And I think that could even be done during the processing of the selector stages. So as soon as we end a selector stage, and going back to the previous piece of pseudocode, as soon as we remove the duplicates, then we could continue. I think that would be equivalent of running the whole lot to completion and then removing the duplicates at the end, although I'd like to see the proof of that.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Doesn't sound particularly contentious. Okay. It sounds like we've made some impact on that. Just to recap for my own sake, it sounds like in terms of sort of wrapping up this, it sounds like that we need to, well, I need to, as chair, after I talk to Tim, discuss to leave a summary over sort of what we've concluded with in the meeting, put that on these various issues. I would say we should probably leave the issues open for the time being, because if there's any further discussion about it, we can keep it going. And then Carsten, when you have the time, I'd be appreciative for your pull request. And I know you don't have time in the next couple of weeks, but at some point that would be kind of key. Is there anything I've missed there? No? Okay.
So should
do we
we?
have Sorry, mate, go ahead.
Through a few more issues? I mean, we have almost an hour of meeting time left.
Sure, we can go through that. Is there anything in particular you'd like to go through next?
Yeah, I'm not. I didn't really prepare for this, so I'm sorry. I think the other issue that got a lot of discussion is the whole expression language issue. Well, one other thing we could do is go through issue 53, which I think it's a really useful input.
Okay. Okay, so this is quite a high level
Yes.
thing. Okay, how do we best approach this? So it looks like there's been just the one comment from Daniel Parker.
I mean, it seemed to me that the next step here was for someone to simply make a choice in each line of the table and then put in a pull request. And I was kind of holding my breath, hoping that Stefan would do that, but he hasn't decided to so far. So it just seemed like a coin tossing exercise, really, to pick on some terms.
I think getting terminology right is really important. So some of these decisions already have been made. I mean, that they are not final, but they have been made for the current document. So I think that would be another pull request I would have a lot of fun writing. But the reason I was bringing this up was whether there's any disagreement or strong opinion on any of these. So are there people around that believe we have to have minus characters and names and things like that?
Doesn't sound like it. But if there is anybody, please speak up now. The other option that we can do is reiterate this on the mailing list.
Yeah, but I think it's more useful to have a pull request that actually makes those decisions. So that
Okay.
this is really mostly asking questions, and discussing the questions is not as interesting as discussing the answers.
Okay. No, that's a fair point.
Just checking, you mentioned minus characters in names. I didn't see that in the issue 53 I was looking at.
It's under the heading review,
Oh, okay.
the third bullet item.
This item here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Thank you.
There's also the script expressions point, but I don't want to open a can of worms on that one. Okay. I don't want to delegate too. Sorry, Carsten, go on.
On the list, we kind of converged on using the terms filter expressions and index expressions.
Yep.
So I'm not sure that script expression is a term we would use today.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So we just need a pull request put together, and then we can have a very clear answer to this one. Okay.
So maybe you can just assign me to 53, and if mention in your summary that if somebody else wants to do that, I'm not wedded to this. So I'm sure happy to pass that on. So the issue that I actually wanted to call up was 54. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So this is really 10 issues in one.
Yeah.
So I think the next step will be to simply divvy this up in 2 issues, and some of which I think we already can close because we have a title, but some of which can be addressed.
Yeah. So we can have a quick look at 54. Yeah, this is big.
Yes.
Is it worth us offline splitting this up?
Yes, maybe after this discussion we can do that, so we can actually close some of the issues.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Just making a note of things. 54.
So the first sub-issue is title of the specification.
Yep.
And Stefan stated an agreement, and I like what he stated there. Is there anything that we need to do to this agreement?
Okay.
Okay, next item, terminology.
Yep.
So I think that the most important thing is the bullet list at the end of this sub-issue.
Yeah.
And I think we have mostly implemented this, so maybe we can check that in the document. So I think I responded to something, and I never know whether it's mailing list or issue, that node and item are essentially synonyms, but you use them when you want to emphasize different aspects of it. So node is really talking about the specific position in a tree, and item is just talking about what's at this position. But in the end, they have the same meaning within this document.
Okay.
I think we agreed on member for the thing that is in an object for the key value pair. And I think we had an agreement to use name value pair, because that's what 8259 says, not key value pair. That's not a choice I would have made, but I think that's what we came up with.
Okay.
And finally, the thing that is in an array is called an element.
Just in passing, I mentioned that a mathematical alternative for the name value pair or key value pair in an object will be maplet.
Would be what?
Maplet, M-A-P-L-E-T.
Oh.
You know, if we wanted to something that was completely neutral from a computing point of view and a unique term, it's got a mathematical history behind that term if we wanted to use it.
I think member is well established and
Yeah.
has not been abused for other things too much. So.
But I think we do need to be very clear on that terminology. So okay. Shall we move on to?
There is a terminology section which currently has definitions like this. So essentially, I take this as reaffirming what we have there. So we have the name value thing there. We have the item. We haven't actually defined node. That's interesting. So do we want to change that, or do we always want to talk about items? I think we should have nodes.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so that is something that a PR will have to address. So if the note takers can note this, it's a very small PR, but it needs to be done.
Yep.
And I think we cannot fix the term union at this point in time. That will require some more work on that particular selector.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next point?
Yeah, so the differentiation thing, we have a sample +1. And of course, I'm happy with the +1.
Yep. Yeah, me too.
Then we have the Xpath reference. So do we get rid of comparison table 2? It sure helped me, but it may be confusing to other people.
I don't have any particularly strong thoughts. I mean, if it could, maybe it could be editorialized and perhaps summarized a little bit further instead.
We could also push it into an appendix.
We could, yes.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think bringing it in earlier in the document risks kind of leaning on Xpath for semantics and being a bit unclear about the semantics in our document, which I don't like. So I think an appendix would be a good idea.
Good point.
Okay. Race slice operator.
Oh, I don't have an opinion on that one.
Would it make sense just splitting this out into a separate issue then?
Yeah, I don't think we can make any progress on this here today.
Okay. Just making note takers, if you could make note of that, please, because you're probably typing faster than I can write. Unions.
Yeah, this seems to focus on the term, but I think the interesting question is about duplicate removal. I think that Stefan has a view that is not so much emphasizing duplicate removal. So that would be different from what we just said in the processing model discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess if we did go the way that we discussed, then there could still be duplicate values in the output.
Yes.
So I think we could get away with the term union there on the understanding that it was a union of node references, but it's might be a bit misleading when you look at if you look at something like the compliance test suite, you would see union producing apparently duplicated output, duplicated values.
Well, the other problem with union is that it's really a set operation, so it doesn't result in an order. But we just discussed that we do want to create a particular order.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
So maybe we should just start a contest on the mailing list, replacement term for union.
Okay. Shall we move on to duplicates?
Yes.
This is quite a lot of...
Yeah, but it's really focusing on arrays where I think the whole ordering discussion is obvious.
Yep. I can see that we've got some comments here.
I think we can just push this to the processing model issue.
Yep. Okay. If nobody else has any strong opinions about that, filter expressions.
Well, I like Glyn's proposal of saying filter expressions only work on arrays because that solves one of the problems with ordering. But I don't know how much people are relying on being able to filter map members.
Okay.
So I think that this is an issue that requires a survey. What are people actually doing? How much damage do we do when we do what Glyn recommends here?
Is there... This may be the second stupidest question I asked today. Is there anything that we can learn from the interop tests around usage here?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and in fact, that was going to be my comment, which is I think the interop tests are really all we've got.
Yeah.
Well, they don't tell us whether applications actually depend on this behavior or not.
However, if implementations don't support it, then they obviously can't be using it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's tricky, isn't it? Because there may be an obscure implementation that happens to be depended upon by thousands of applications. So it's hard to tell.
Okay. Is it worth then, is this to be split off into a separate issue so that we
yes.
can, that analysis can be done? Okay. Issue, okay. Respect to implementations. This shouldn't be fairly controversial.
Yeah, I think we should have a little bit of introductory text that explains. I mean, we should not overdo this, but we should really explain at the beginning what the considerations were that went into this process. And so I think this is good material, but it's mostly just editorial writing this up. I don't think there is a big disagreement on the principle. Of course, there always will be disagreements on what the principle actually means in a specific case. So for instance, in the filter expressions point, my view would be that if an implementation does this, this is fine, but we don't have to respect that aspect. But yeah, so it's a good motherhood and apple pie point to make in the introduction.
Okay, that sounds like an issue so that we can get the editorial work for it referenced. Yeah. Okay. And lastly, we've got error handling.
Yes. I think we converged here.
Yeah.
So we just have to write it up.
Okay, so that's. Do we need a separate issue for that, or?
Yes.
Is that,
always
okay.
have separate issues. If there is something that needs to be done, there needs to be an issue reminding us that it needs to be done.
Yep.
So
once well, if it was already happening, then it might be a bit too late. That's all.
No, you can still close an issue even if it's already happening. My objective would be to actually split this issue 54 up, so we can actually close issue 54 because we have the other issues that completely replace it.
Yep. Going through my list, and I think that sorry, brain fart. It sounds like we've got a few issues here. We've got one, two. We've got, with the exception of union and duplicates, everything else will be turned into a new issue. This is something that I can do with Tim in terms of creating the new issues. And if people in the working group want to check my homework to make sure that I haven't misrepresented the issues or said anything untoward, that would be very much appreciative. And then once we've got those issues, we can refer back to 54 and then close them. Right.
So the only reason why I haven't done these issues yet is that you said you will be making these issues. It's a pretty mechanical thing to create them.
Yeah. And boring mechanical things are what I'm best at.
Sorry about that.
First step is admitting you have a problem. So Christina's just asked a question. Apologies for only just noticing it. Christina, would you like to ask it on the mic, or do you want me to relay it? Okay, so Christina asks, is there any way that we could quickly resolve not to change the most basic object.first.second and other pathing syntax so that implementers who are using those things today can feel safer that they are not going to get hit with a breaking change?
Well, one way to approach this would be to start an examples appendix that has a few examples that we all agree on what the result needs to be? So $.A.B certainly would be one such example where we should be very clear on what that means. But there are little issues like, what is it if one of the items in that sequence actually is an array that we haven't fully defined yet?
Okay. Creating I think that's probably the best idea for now. Okay. If that sounds like another issue to create.
Yeah.
Could I just ask a question of Christina? Is she happy with the current draft behavior for the pathing syntax? Okay, great. I was trying to distinguish between the current behavior in the wild and the current behavior in the draft. Thank you.
Okay, cool. It sounds like we made some progress. We still have about 30 minutes left on the clock. Do we want to keep going through issues, or have we got enough actions to move ahead with things? Hello, Francesca.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to suggest that you, the chairs, organize an interim meeting sometimes between this IETF and the next one. And it would be good. I was looking at some of the people who are active in the GitHub issues, and some of them seem to be in a different time zone. So it might be good to have like a doodle poll and make sure that editors and at least these people can be present.
Yep, that works for me. I would, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to do it eventually. Would just a straw poll of people, would something say the approximately the first week or two of May be appropriate, given that the next IETF meeting is not until mid-July, if I remember correctly?
I'm personally away on the first week of May. Second week would be okay.
Okay. I'll get a I'll put it to the mailing list with a poll to see what times work for people. I'll be honest and say it probably favour the times and dates for a lot of the editors that are editors, as well as my co-chair. But I'll create it as an action to take it to the mailing list and come up with some times and dates, and we can set up something in May or even April. Okay. Shall we go through more issues, or shall we conclude? I think we've made quite a lot of progress today, which has been
I would just briefly like to point to issue 55, which is interesting because it's not really an issue that we can act on, but it's a statement of interest from standards activity that is making use of this or plans to make use of this. So I'm not sure how we will handle these things, but it's really good information that we need to process in some form or another. And I mean, we are not doing a liaison process or anything like that here. But I think it would be good to read this issue and maybe further issues we get from other people who want to use this work, and think about what our response should be. So if they have unfulfillable expectations, we probably should say that. Or if there are activities that need to be split off and are not currently in the purview of this group, we should try to detect that.
Okay. No, that sounds completely reasonable. Looks like there's been some discussion on this. Might it be of use? I don't recall seeing this posted to the mailing list. Would it be an idea to do so?
Yeah, I think it would be good to have a pointer to that in the mailing list, and maybe have a discussion of that in the mailing list.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool.
I guess we could discuss the use of the issue tracker versus mailing list, if people would like to discuss that briefly.
Sure. However, I think the position that myself and Tim have made on that hasn't really changed. But if it's not working for the working group, if people want to chime in with any views that they have, I'd like to hear them.
I was just going to say, I wonder if we should try to distill discussion in the mailing list into issues, because I feel that we're kind of in two camps at the moment. Some people prefer the mailing list, some people prefer issues, and there's a slight disorganization about it.
I think that generally the issues are good for getting granularity into the process. So if we identify things in the meandering mailing list discussion that actually start to be actionable, so it's just a question where we need to collect information and then make a decision. These should always be converted into issues, so people can start writing pull requests, because pull requests really should be closing issues. So I mean, may occasionally have pull requests that don't have an issue, but the normal situation would be we have an issue, we have identified a problem, we have had some discussion, and then somebody writes a pull request and closes that. So that should be the normal progression of things as they move into the draft. But we also might have the inverse progression where something is raised in an issue and it turns out it's just a wider issue and it's not actionable in the same sense, and then we should point to the issue in the mailing list or even start the discussion in the mailing list.
Okay, that's good. I mean, maybe we need to go through the list of issues and flag some of the things as requiring further discussion, so take it back to the mailing list in some sense.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay.
Labels are free.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, if there's no more issues for us to go through, I think we can probably wrap things up for today. Final call for anybody that has anything they want to talk through. Okay, I'll take that silence as we're good to go. I'd like to thank all of you for your time today, including you, Carsten and Glenn and Jeffrey, for helping me out here, being without a co-chair. I'll be putting out a poll to the mailing list later today or in the next coming days. How about I make a promise I can actually keep? and we'll see you on the mailing list. And if not, we'll see you at the next IETF in July. So
Great.
thank you
Thanks,
very
James.
much. Thank you very much.